Well, hopefully by now you've got your cool season vegetables in, and because of all the wet weather, we're running a little bit behind on some of ours as well, but again, we're in the process, and I want to talk to you about the importance of fertility on your garden this year. Now, again, we've encouraged you often to take a soil test, and our soil test here at the Studio Gardens tells us that we're adequate in phosphorus and potassium, which means we only need to use nitrogen throughout the growing season. So when we've come in and planted our crops here, we didn't incorporate any fertilizer into the soil because, again, it's adequate and we would just be wasting our money. But I think the thing that you need to keep in mind is whatever your soil test tells you also dictates what you need to do in far as application on either starter solution or side dressing, and we're going to talk about those. Now, the starter solution is usually in a water-soluble form that you apply on your transplants just as soon as you plant them. And so we've got some broccoli here in front. Now, here at the gardens, you may have seen me at the start of the segment using a GWA here. And what this is, we already have a liquid or a water-soluble fertilizer in here that we mix up in this tank behind us. And what we do is we just siphon the fertilizer out of it, and it already calculates it for us, and we use that because we have so many transplants that we put in at one time, and then during the growing season, if we need to come back and fertilize them with a liquid fertilizer, we can do that as well. Now, in the home situation, you may not want to invest some money in this type of a setup, but you can use your traditional granular fertilizer that is water soluble. You can mix that up according to directions, fertilize each of your transplants, or if you have any granular fertilizer left over, you can mix up 2 tablespoons to a gallon of water, and this is a half tablespoon measuring spoon, so we'll put 4 in to this gallon. And you want to do that the night before because there's clay particles and things inside here that needs to have plenty of time, almost 24 hours to dissolve. So you want to stir it up and make sure you do that ahead of time. Now, most of these water-soluble or fertilizers are a complete fertilizer, and so we'd put on about a half cup to each transplant. Now, in our case, we'll just use a nitrogen again because of the fact that we don't need that P and K. So remember your soil test and what it's telling you. So that's the starter solutions that you would use right at the initial time of planting. Now, when your plants get a little bit older and established, like our peas here, then we need to concern ourselves with what we call side dressing. And again, because we don't need P and K, most of the time your side dressing solutions are going to be a nitrogen source. Now, if you want to stick with the organic type fertilizers, you can use things like blood meal, and here it's anywhere from 10 to 12% nitrogen. We have some of the cottonseed meal, which is about 7% nitrogen, and then it's going to have a little bit of potassium in it too, which is very small. Some other organic type products that you might be able to find in the market would be hoof meal, which runs about 12.5% nitrogen, fish meal, which is going to be 8%, and then one that's not real easy to find, but if you try hard enough, you want to use it, it's a little bit higher in nitrogen, is bat guano, about 12%. So if you happen to be in one of the cities where there's a zoo, you might check with them. You can get it mail order, or some of your specialty garden centers that focus more on organic products. Now remember, when you're talking about slow or organic products, they're very slow release, and they're great to use this time of year when we don't have any nutrient deficiencies. But if your plants are already nitrogen deficient, you may want to look at a synthetic, which you can still use safely because you'll get a quicker green up. And that's what I have over here, is some ammonium nitrate, which is very white in color, granular. It's almost 100% water soluble, and it's about 33–34% nitrogen, or you can use urea, which also is about 44–45% nitrogen. Now, once we know some of the things that are out on the market, you'll also find that there's some new products that are synthetic that are also slow release. You have to ask for them, but they are out there. They're usually sulfur coated, which again you could use in some of your vegetable gardens. But now that we know what you can use, how would we put on some of the fertilizer? Well, there's a couple of ways. One would be to do a band or a ring application, which means you're just sprinkling in a circle around each individual plant, or you can do what we call side dressing with a just down the row. And that would be, if we had a row of peas here, you just run right down the row, right to the side of them, usually about 4 to 6 inches away from them. Now, it's important to remember the amount that you put on. Remember, our recommendations on nitrogen are 1 pound of actual nitrogen per 1,000 square feet. Well, this bed is about 50 square feet, so we're going to have to cut that down considerably. And usually we recommend, depending on the product, anywhere from, say, 1/4 to 1/2 pint per 100 square feet. That's still not a lot of fertilizer, and I think you'll be surprised that most people are over-fertilizing. And let me show you what we're talking about here. I've already got some scales here, and we have it calibrated to include the weight of my plastic container here. Now I want you to watch how much fertilizer is really a pound. And you can see I almost fill that cup up there, and it's just right at a pound of nitrogen. Now that is the recommendation for 1,000 square feet. As you can see, people are putting on a lot of nitrogen, sometimes way, way too much. And if we're talking about 1/4 to 1/2 pint per 100 square feet, and we have 50 square feet, basically what we're dealing with is just putting on, maybe just a tablespoon around each plant. And one thing that you may want to do if you're like me, a lot of times I like to use my hand, and I maybe want to carry just a handful with me and go down the side. Well, measure out again how much your hand will hold. And you can see that's not even, that's just about 1/4 pound. So again, I think hopefully this will illustrate the fact that most people are putting too much nitrogen on. Now what happens if you over-fertilize with nitrogen? Well, on your cool season crops especially, things that are root crops, what happens is you end up getting more top growth and you don't get any root growth. And so it's very crucial as to the timing of when you put on these slow release or water insoluble or any type of side dressing products. So now I'm going to give you a listing of some of our most common cool season crops grown in Oklahoma and when you would put that side dressing application on. And we'll start with beets. Usually it's around the time when they're 4 to 5 inches in height. And again, you have to be careful. If you put too much nitrogen on, you're going to get a lot of leaf growth, and that's okay if you want beet greens. Broccoli, it's about 3 weeks after transplanting. Again, you need to go with a light nitrogen application or you'll get too much foliage and not enough of your head. Brussels sprouts, it's 3 weeks after transplanting. Cabbage and cauliflower are about 4 weeks after you transplant them. Your carrots are when they're about 6 inches tall, again, a very light nitrogen application because again, you're dealing with a root crop and you can get too much top growth. Kale is when it's 6 to 8 inches. Your lettuce is 3 weeks after you transplant. And then if you're growing leaf lettuce, you need to come back, and if you cut your lettuce, you may need to put another application of nitrogen on. Onions, it's about 3 weeks. And then again, when they're 6 to 8 inches or when the bulbs start to swell. Peas, like we have here, about 6 inches in height. Radishes, really because they're such a short season crop, if you have plenty of fertilizer to start with, you don't need to side dress them because you can get them too hot and they won't taste well. Spinach, about 1/3 grown, and then after a heavy cutting you may need to put another application on. And turnips also when they're about 1/3 grown. So now we've hopefully answered what you need to do in your starter solution for transplants, how to side dress, what you can use, and hopefully you'll have your season off to a great start with your cool season. And in a few weeks, we'll talk about side dressing warm season vegetables as well.